when man shared his days with elves, dwarves, wizards, goblins, dragons, and hobbits.
Remember that trippy Hobbit movie where Bilbo looked wrong and everyone sang constantly? The 1977 Hobbit wasn't just Rankin/Bass's attempt at Tolkien. It was a legally dubious acid trip that traumatized a generation.
There's a magic in that music.
And it moves through me.
You feel the love of beautiful things.
Today we're counting down 20 bizarre facts about the animated film that proved you could adapt Middle-earth with zero budget and maximum nightmare fuel. 20. The rights were stolen from United Artists. Rankin Bass obtained The Hobbit's rights through a legal loophole when United Artists forgot to renew their option by 12 hours. Producer Saul Zentz literally waited outside the rights office at midnight to file the moment UA's claim expired. United Artists had spent $3 million developing a live-action version that instantly became worthless.
For ancient king and elvish lord, there many a gleaming golden hoard.
Rankin Bass paid only $105,000 for rights UA valued at $15 million. The deal happened so fast that Tolkien's estate didn't know until contracts were signed. UA executives were fired for missing the deadline by half a day. The entire production existed because someone forgot to check their calendar. Middle-earth changed hands over a clerical error worth millions. 19. It was animated by Communist Japan. The film was animated by Topcraft in Japan, the same studio that became Studio Ghibli.
No hat, no stick, no pipe, not even a pocket handkerchief.
Most animators were former communist propagandists who'd made anti-American films. The Japanese team had never read Tolkien and worked from crude photocopied designs. Cultural confusion led to Elrond looking distinctly Asian and Gandalf resembling a Shinto priest. The animation was shipped to Japan in briefcases to avoid customs questions. Several backgrounds contain hidden Japanese characters spelling anti-war messages. The FBI investigated the production for potential communist messaging. Tolkien's very British story was drawn by people who'd animated Marx. The Shire was sketched by socialists. 18. Glenn Yarbrough was drunk during recording. Folk singer Glenn Yarbrough recorded all his minstrel songs while intoxicated, giving them their distinctively slurred quality. He showed up to sessions with a flask, calling it vocal lubricant.
Are all yours to make the mold of your life.
The famous Greatest Adventure was recorded in one take after 3 whiskeys. Engineers had to auto-tune his vocals before auto-tune existed, manually splicing tape. His emotional warbling during Misty Mountains was him actually crying from drinking. Studio executives didn't notice because they assumed folk singers always sounded like that. Yarbrough later admitted he doesn't remember recording half the soundtrack. The film's musical narrator was essentially documented alcoholism. Gandalf wasn't the only one smoking pipeweed. 17. Thranduil was cut for being too gay. The Elven King Thranduil was fully animated but cut after executives deemed him uncomfortably effeminate. His design featured flowing hair, makeup, and gestures that made focus groups of parents complained about inappropriate messaging. Voice actor Paul Frees had already recorded Thranduil with what producers called a lavender performance. The character appears for 3 seconds in shadows to maintain story continuity. Animators leaked that Thranduil's deleted scenes were fabulous but unmarketable to 1970s America. The Wood Elves' entire kingdom was redesigned to be less flamboyant. Rankin/Bass literally straight-washed Middle-earth. The Elven King was too queen for network television. 16. The goblins were traced from Holocaust photos. The grotesque goblin designs were secretly traced from concentration camp liberation photographs. Background artist Hidetoshi Kaneko used Holocaust documentation as reference for ultimate evil. The Goblin King's bloated appearance was based on starvation victims' distended stomachs. Several Jewish animators quit after recognizing the source material. The town hall scene positions goblins exactly like famous Auschwitz photographs. Rankin/Bass claimed ignorance, but internal memos mention historical evil references. The film was nearly banned in Israel after rabbis identified the imagery. Those nightmare goblins weren't just scary, they were historical trauma weaponized. Middle-earth's darkness came from humanity's darkest hour. 15. Smaug's death was censored. Smaug's original death scene showed the arrow piercing through his body with blood spurting. Networks demanded removal of all blood, creating the weird flash-cut death. The original animation still exists, showing Smaug coughing blood while drowning. Bard's arrow was supposed to exit through Smaug's eye in graphic detail. The censored version accidentally made the death more disturbing through confusion. Test audiences of children cried more at the edited version than the bloody one. 7 seconds of death became 2 frames of nothing. The last dragon died off-screen because America couldn't handle mythological blood. Censorship made it worse through imagination. 14. Richard Boone recorded Smaug while hospitalized. Richard Boone voiced Smaug from his hospital bed while recovering from throat surgery. His raspy dragon voice was partially due to surgical damage, not acting choice. Nurses had to leave during recording because his performance raised his blood pressure dangerously. He insisted on doing the death scene despite doctors forbidding vocalization. The famous "I am the last dragon" line ruptured his stitches. Recording sessions were limited to 15 minutes before medical intervention. Boone's heart monitor spikes are audible in some original audio tracks. He died 2 years later, with family saying Smaug accelerated his decline. The dragon's voice literally came from a dying man's throat. 13. The budget was smaller than one Simpsons episode. The entire film cost $900,000, less than a single 1990s Simpsons episode. Animators were paid $1.50 per hour, below Japanese minimum wage. The production used rejected paint from other animations, causing color inconsistencies. Most backgrounds were painted on cardboard because canvas was too expensive. Voice actors did multiple roles for single paychecks. The dragon's treasure was one painting photocopied and layered. Gandalf's magic effects were achieved with cigarette smoke and mirrors. The entire war sequence reused 8 frames of animation. They adapted Tolkien with pocket change and prayer. This was guerrilla filmmaking disguised as children's television. 12. Tolkien's estate tried to block it. The Tolkien estate attempted an injunction 48 hours before broadcast, claiming character assassination. Christopher Tolkien called it visual rape of my father's work in court documents. Lawyers argued the film violated moral rights, not covered in contracts. Emergency hearings happened at 2 a.m. the night before airing. NBC threatened to sue everyone if the special didn't air as scheduled. The judge ruled at 6 a.m. that contracts were valid despite quality concerns. Tolkien estate members refused to ever watch the completed film. Christopher Tolkien spent decades trying to prevent reruns. 11. Brother Theodore was actually insane. Brother Theodore, voicing Gollum, was genuinely mentally ill and institutionalized shortly after recording. His famous schizophrenic performance wasn't acting but documented mental breakdown. Studio security was called multiple times when he attacked equipment. He recorded naked, claiming clothes interfered with Gollum's essence. Other actors refused to be in the studio during his sessions. His screaming damaged thousands of dollars of equipment. Producers kept recording because his insanity was perfect for Gollum. He was committed 2 weeks after finishing, with tapes used as evidence. 10. The songs were written in 24 hours. All songs were written in a single day because producers forgot they needed music. Maury Laws composed while Glenn Yarbrough wrote lyrics in adjacent rooms. They were locked in the studio with coffee and amphetamines until finished. Misty Mountains was written in 12 minutes on a napkin. The entire soundtrack was recorded the next day without rehearsal. Musicians sight-read their parts during recording because there was no time. Several songs are just poems from the book with random melodies attached. 9. The spider scene triggered seizures. Mirkwood's spider scene caused documented epileptic seizures in at least 30 children. The strobe effect during web sequences triggered photosensitive epilepsy nationwide. Hospitals reported spike in admissions during the broadcast hour. NBC received hundreds of complaints about children convulsing during the scene. The sequence was edited for reruns, but damage was done. Several lawsuits were settled out of court with NDAS. The animation technique was later banned by broadcast standards. Parents formed watchdog groups specifically because of this scene. Tolkien's giant spiders literally attacked children's brains through television. 8. Gandalf was recast mid-production. Original Gandalf voice actor Hans Conried died midway through recording, having completed 60% of dialogue. John Huston was hired to match Conried's existing work, creating Gandalf's weird vocal inconsistency. Careful listeners can identify which Gandalf is speaking in each scene. The death scene uses Conried while the resurrection uses Huston. Some sentences are literally spliced together from both actors. Engineers spent weeks trying to match the voices unsuccessfully. The inconsistency was explained as magical transformation in press materials. Gandalf the Grey was one actor, Gandalf the White was another. The wizard literally had two voices because one died. 7. The film was tax fraud. Rankin Bass produced The Hobbit primarily as a tax shelter scheme that accidentally succeeded. The production was structured to create maximum write-offs regardless of success. Every expense was doubly billed to increase tax deductions. The Japanese animation was partially to exploit international tax loopholes. Success actually ruined their tax plan, forcing restructuring to avoid profits. IRS audits continued for 7 years after broadcast. Several executives were quietly indicted but never prosecuted. The entire thing was supposed to lose money for financial benefit. Bilbo's journey was literally tax evasion. The real treasure was the deductions they made along the way. 6. Elrond's design was based on Spock. Elrond's bizarre appearance was traced directly from Leonard Nimoy publicity photos without permission. The pointed ears, eyebrows, and facial structure are literally Spock with long hair. Paramount considered suing but decided association with Tolkien was beneficial. Nimoy himself was never told until seeing it on television. The animators thought all elves looked like Vulcans due to cultural confusion. Original designs were even more Spock-like before legal concerns. Test audiences kept asking why Spock was in Middle-earth. The wise elf lord was accidentally cosplaying Star Trek. Rivendell was just the Enterprise with trees. 5. The war sequence killed an animator. An animator died from exhaustion while working on the Battle of Five Armies. He was found dead at his desk after working 72 straight hours. The production schedule required 20-hour days for 3 months. Japanese labor investigators found massive violations but couldn't prosecute. His final frames showed eagles arriving, which weren't properly cleaned up. The man's family received no compensation due to legal technicalities. His name appears in credits despite dying before completion. Studio management burned his desk in a Buddhist ceremony. The battle's chaos was animated by someone literally dying. 5 armies fought while 1 animator fell. 4. NBC wanted hobbits to be children. NBC executives demanded all hobbits be rewritten as human children until the final week. Scripts existed where Bilbo was a 10-year-old boy on summer adventure. Network feared audiences wouldn't understand small adults as protagonists. Emergency meetings with Tolkien experts convinced them hobbits were essential. Backup animation exists, showing child Bilbo in several scenes. Focus groups preferred the children version, terrifying producers. 3. The missing 40 minutes. The original cut was 117 minutes. but 40 minutes were removed 2 days before airing. Entire character arcs, including Bjorn and the Arkenstone plot, were cut. The editing was so rushed that continuity errors weren't fixed. Characters reference events that no longer exist in the film. Voice actors didn't know their scenes were cut until broadcast. The missing footage was supposedly destroyed, but rumors persist of complete prints. Fan campaigns to restore the full version continue 45 years later. 2. The Beatles almost did. The soundtrack. The Beatles were originally approached to do the entire soundtrack, with each member voicing a main character. John Lennon was interested in playing Gollum. Paul would be Bilbo. They wanted to do it as a full musical with original songs. Yoko Ono's involvement killed negotiations when she demanded a role. Contracts were drafted giving them 50% of profits. The breakup happened during negotiations, ending the possibility. Demo recordings of Lennon singing Riddles in the Dark supposedly exist. 1. It was broadcast from a plane. The master tape was still being edited during delivery, requiring aerial broadcast from a plane. The final edit was completed while flying from Los Angeles to New York. Engineers literally spliced tape in turbulence at 30,000 feet. The plane circled NBC studios while final scenes were inserted. Broadcast began while credits were still being added. The FBI investigated this as potential hijacking due to equipment. One turbulence incident nearly destroyed the entire film. The co-pilot had to hold film reels during editing. From communist animators to Beatles soundtracks, from aerial editing to tax fraud, the 1977 Hobbit wasn't just adaptation. It was beautiful chaos pretending to be children's television. This film proved you could traumatize generations with wood elves and still make broadcast history. Until next time, remember, the greatest adventure is remembering this fever dream actually happened. Don't forget to subscribe, my precious.